So, in this screencast, we're going to talk about pollution and human health. And it's going to be mercifully short, remarkably so. Okay, so, hey, there are plenty of substances that have been clearly demonstrated to cause human health problems. This can be things from deformed children, miscarriages, uh, itchy eyes, whatever, cancer. Okay, so there are definitely things out there that we know for a fact they cause problems. Okay, so let's look at one in particular, asbestos. Okay, we've talked about it before, but there's absolutely no question about it. People who have exposure to asbestos, especially significant exposures, uh, they develop a particular type of cancer called mesothelioma. And this, mesothelioma, you get it from asbestos. All right, and so if we see mesothelioma and we know that you had exposure to asbestos, boom, we know the cause. All right, so but it's not always that way, but sometimes it is. So another one that we clearly know it causes problems is tropospheric ozone. So photochemical smog. Remember when nitrogen oxides mix with VOCs and they get exposed to warm temperatures and sunlight? Remember they make O3, and O3 up in the upper atmosphere is great. It blocks ultraviolet light, but down here at ground level, we breathe it in, and it definitely causes lung irritation, buildup of mucus, decreased lung function, lung disease, even lung cancers. So we have a clearly demonstrated link between photochemical smog and hospitalizations due to respiratory distress. It's known, okay? And so, the organizations, like governmental organizations, like in America, you have the Food and Drug Administration, okay, the FDA. They have lists of chemicals that they've been able to demonstrate, for instance, are carcinogens, or mutagens, or teratogens. So let's look at each of these in turn. So a carcinogen is clearly something that causes cancer. All right. There's so many chemicals that fall in this category, but let's just talk about a few of them. We've already talked about before when we talked about air pollution: radon, formaldehyde, asbestos, but there's cigarette smoke, alcohol consumption. There's many, 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 many things that cause cancer. Now, cancer is basically when your cells, the DNA in your cells doesn't replicate correctly, and you end up getting transcription errors. Mutagens are compounds that cause mutations of the DNA, usually through epigenetics, by how it methylates the DNA. And so uh, the thing is, like they can cause mutations, cause cancer, but you can also have mutations that are non-carcinogenic. Okay, so put it this way: many, many, many mutagens are carcinogens, and many carcinogens are also mutagens. Okay, so uh, uh, mutagens include things like polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which is a mouthful, but basically cyclic hydrocarbons, or those ring-shaped hydrocarbons, like what POPs are made out of. Benzene is sort of the base structure. Okay, it's just a six-sided carbon ring. These things do have this tendency to cause mutations of our DNA. And then there's teratogens. So teratogens are things that cause birth defects, and so there's chemicals that we know cause that, like toluene, which is a solvent, cadmium, which is a metal. There's one particularly unfortunate case. Right about the time I was born. I mean, in 1961 and 62, there was a treatment for, I think it was for sleep disorder. It might have been for nausea, actually. And it was called thalidomide. And they gave this medicine to people thinking it was going to be this wonder drug. And all of a sudden, all these women had these babies with horrible birth defects. The one they'd be born without arms. It was so tragic. In fact, in the hospital I was born, the day I was born, the woman that was in the next room over gave birth to a child who had these birth defects from this teratogenic compound called thalidomide. Thank goodness my mom was used to having babies and didn't need to take any kind of medicine when she was pregnant with me. Okay, so anyway, those are the three categories. Okay. But it turns out there's lots of substances out there. There's over 1,000 known endocrine disruptors. Well, they are endocrine disruptors, but that doesn't necessarily mean they cause cancer. It doesn't necessarily mean they cause mutations, or that they cause birth defects. That some do, some don't. We don't know. And so the reality is, for many, many, many substances, we have reason to suspect that they cause problems, but we can't establish a cause-effect relationship to them. So we can't list them as, we had to list them as possible carcinogens, possible mutagens, possible teratogens. So, and why is this that we don't know? Well, one is for ethical reasons. We just can't do human studies, right? When we do have the ability to say this, like, radon causes cancer, it's not because we expose people to radon to see how much cancer they got. We were just able to do like a sort of a forensic study of, well, the rate at which people got this particular cancer is very clearly correlated with the amount of radon exposure they got. So that's how we do that. We don't do the studies, okay? And unfortunately, human bodies are very complex, and so is the environment and the ecosystem. They're very complex, and so because there's a lot of genetic variation within the human genome, that means that not everybody responds to toxins in the same way, and then you have the possibility there's combinations of them. So we get exposed to small amounts of just thousands and thousands of different compounds all the time. So it's really difficult to sort of disaggregate that and say, like, this one compound is what's causing a problem. So the big takeaway is, for most pollutants that are out there, we don't really know how much of it takes to cause problems, if any. So we can do these LD50 studies, but you're not going to get exposed to that much. You're way below the threshold level, but it still might be causing problems. We just can't know. Now, this brings us to a rather interesting phenomenon here, and I don't mean to upset any of you if you have family members who have been exposed to this, but it's called sick building syndrome. Okay, so sick building syndrome is a great illustration of how sometimes we do and sometimes we don't know the causality of these symptoms that are caused by either pathogens or toxins. So basically, when we say there's sick building syndrome, or SBS, it just means that there's a lot of people in one particular building, like a workplace or a condominium or a cruise ship, okay? And they all come down with a similar set of symptoms, and the symptoms when I say a similar set, they all come down with symptoms, but these symptoms tend to fall into these categories, right? So like headache, fatigue, that's a common one, difficulty concentrating, maybe they feel itchy, maybe they have diarrhea, bad digestion. They might have runny nose, itchy eyes. They might have like asthma-like symptoms. Okay, or they might say, I smell weird smells, and so that's what's causing me to be sick. And here's the thing: maybe it is making them sick. We don't really know necessarily. So let's look at it. It's there's not a lot of cases that we know of people in a building getting exposed to large amounts of toxins, thank goodness. But we definitely see this with pathogens. So there's been a couple of cases where there have been cases where, like, many people get exposed to one particular one is called Norovirus. So Norovirus is a virus that it can stay viable in the air for longer than, say, coronavirus. Coronavirus, you go 10 feet away. No, I'm sorry, no, 3 meters away, and you're pretty much okay. But Norovirus can move through the air conditioner, end up in other rooms and stuff like that. So there have been many people. My son, like, he works on a ship. His ship got it. That's like everyone on the ship got sick with this stuff. So it's basically a floating building, right? So it's the sick building. Okay. But here's the thing, and again, I don't want to upset anybody when I say this, but it is certainly true. These symptoms you get here are basically immune response. Okay, and the thing is, our brains are susceptible to suggestion. And so there have been many times when people have had a sick building, all right, and they send in specialists to try to figure out what's going on, and they can't figure out anything. Now, it could be that there's something in there, some toxin that's causing all these people to have these symptoms, and they just can't isolate it because we don't know. But then there's also this. If people believe that they're being exposed to toxins, if the person in the cubicle next to you says, this building is making me sick, I smell this weird smell, and you smell a weird smell, in your mind, you have a subconscious mind. You have no control over what it does. Let's understand that you have no control over it. And it goes, dude, you're getting poisoned by this stuff. And so what it does, it triggers your immune system. Your immune system is largely controlled by your brain, your subconscious mind. And so all of a sudden, you activate your endocrine system, and you start having these allergic type responses. You can have, diarrhea for certain, headache. All these symptoms we see can happen just because your body thinks it's being poisoned, even when it's not. So that's what's so confusing and frustrating about this aspect of human health is that there's so many toxins out there. Some of them can cause problems, but sometimes you can be exposed to things that don't cause problems, but your body still gets sick. So anyway, I told you it'd been mercifully short. I hope it was. I don't know if it was. I just get to talking sometimes.